Hello, I'm Patricia Angelin of Alba Technique, and you are at All the Feels. Today we're going to be talking about mental health. And obviously, emotions have a huge part to play in your mental health and in mine. As you know, those of you who follow me and watch, I always like to start out on something that you can look at when you're beginning to listen to my voice that is beautiful. Books, a lovely red wall, a carpet from Morocco, a la the 17th century on the table, a leather-bound book, a Bill Campbell Healing and the Mind book, a little candle, Waterford crystal, and roses. Oh my goodness, those pink roses that you are looking at are from Billy Flowers Wholesale. Billy Flowers Wholesale can be visited by you if you're in New York. And I do suggest that you come because it's right in the first floor of the Alba Technique studio building. So it'd be a great stopover after going through the craziness of New York. Oh, thank you, Katie, for putting up the link there. And so the roses that you're currently looking at are my favorites. And Billy knows that they're my favorites. The first rose he ever gave me, and they're called Pink Floyd. And of course, they are an homage to the classic rock band Pink Floyd. And they smell divine. I wish I could share with you the smell of those roses. And what you're also seeing in the shot has to do with emotions, in that it is a locket that is a heart, an anatomical locket. And of course, let me see if I can, it's right above that light, which is like not helping you at all, really. And I have asked that Katie put up the link there, so she did that. Golly, can I get rid of this light? You will notice that there's a slight cast to the light of pink. And that's because my light bulb blew out and I had to put in a purple light bulb. So you may all laugh at me a great deal, but do not adjust your sets. The color balance is not off on your camera. It is definitely this light bulb. So I'll share it with you. Let me show you a little more of the studio. So panning up from here, this is you see the blue light and the beautiful New Orleans oil of New Orleans and the oil of Dalkey Island. And you also see the pink purple light on a lamp that used to belong to my parents, and then balanced with a very, very warm light and the candles here. Then panning to my left in the chair I'm sitting in, I've tried to balance it out with a full spectrum here. And this, it's hard to tell in this, but this is actually a red light. And then, of course, what you see behind me when I bring my face back, getting the tripod set up and turning it around. So that's for those of you who've been joining me frequently so that you can feel more like you're in the room with me. So today, the mental game of music, the mental game of tennis was, I think, the first book talked about with that, and it was by W. Timothy Galway in 1997. And of course, you can't copyright a title. So there's a mental game of electronic music, a mental game of baseball, which was a bestseller because baseball was a very intellectual game. And there is even a whole psychology coaching business that has grown up around the mental game of various sports. And the psychological sports coach, what was his name? Bill Cole, in 2014 published an article in one of the sports psychology periodicals in which he says that breathing is your best friend. Of course, looking at that, I would, as you would imagine, go, duh, that's what I do. But that is what I do at Alba Technique. It is breathing, and it is involved with the Alba emoting, emotional effector patterning identified by Susanna Bloch and her neuropsychology research colleagues. So, starting with that, the mental health is trending right now. Mental health, big thing, very, very chic. A lot of celebrities and stars are talking about mental health. They're giving their time to mental health causes in a lot of humble brags. And as you can tell, I'm a little bit down on all of that because virtue signaling just, oh, for heaven's sakes, get over yourself, is the way I feel about that, since we're talking about all the feels. And I don't hold anything back from you from within me either. But however one feels about a person's virtue signaling, we know that mental health is a very big deal. And finally, it is being talked about more, and people are admitting that everything is not always roses. But in order to be a person who is strong, strong, independent woman that I am, I need to know that I have lots of emotions, lots of feelings around absolutely everything in my life. That's human. It's appropriate. And when it comes to the public fore, in and out at different times, and right now it's being talked about a lot because of the Tokyo Summer Olympics, particularly with that dear, beautiful young woman, Simone Biles, and I think before her, a tennis player named Naomi Osaka. So these names, for anyone who listens to any news whatsoever, is going to know these names, because these fine young athletes have both observed themselves to be on the edge mentally, which is to say on the edge emotionally, on the edge of what at one time in history, not long ago, would have been called a nervous breakdown. And they have decided to step back. Now, I haven't heard the latest, so I don't know whether Ms. Biles is going to compete again in the individual part of the Olympics. But she trusted her team members, and I think even without her, they won. So I think that when one does what she does, which is observe the self and go, what's happening with me? Now, she had a bad day, and she had a lot of emotions, some of which we can guess, some of them we can't, and we shouldn't try to guess because it's individual. She's obviously a very driven young woman in the most wonderful ways, as indeed is anybody who really commits to being an athlete, or indeed anybody in my realm of things who really commits to being an artist. If you commit to being an artist, if you commit to being an actor, a musician, a dancer, a painter, a sculptor, if you're not going to be a dilettante, and everybody can do that, it takes the same amount of drive as somebody preparing for the Olympics. If you're doing a Broadway show, 9 shows a week, or off-Broadway or off-Broadway, you are an Olympic athlete because of the energy that it takes to do that. Whether you're doing a comedy like Friends, one of my students is doing a parody, a musical parody that has toured the United States and is now a new production of it back in New York. And she's doing a lot of shows a week, and whether you're doing it for 2,000 people in a theater, 200 people in a theater, or 2 million people and it's being televised, emotions and feelings are all around this. And so she's looking at herself, Ms. Biles is, and she's saying, I can't, I just can't. I had a bad day. I'm in a sport where I could maim myself for life if I make mistakes. On the beams, she could die. She could break her neck, literally, or a limb, or something that might never repair completely. So, oh my goodness, we need to all rejoice and have good feelings for her that she has observed herself, said, that mistake really threw me. It's so unprecedented in my professional life. I don't know what to do with the emotions about it, but what it signals to me is that I'm getting more and more and more scared, and I'm feeling more and more and more pushed, like everything is pushing against me, and there is nobody in the stands, and as an extrovert, I can't I can't feed off the wonderful energies that are of all of these wonderful people being there with me in a stadium. All of these things, they're not there because it's post, or even, if we can even say post yet, pandemic. So I think, as a minor expert in emotion, that the feelings surrounding the mistake that she made, and even the mistake itself in her body that caused her not to land, not to be able to do what she would normally be able to do as a gymnast, was actually caused by the pressure, caused by how, when we're afraid, when we have anxiety, the mind goes in lots of different directions. So the mental game goes in directions. The focus is off. The focus of the mind is off. The ability to relax into the movement and control the movement is off. And that's what she observed. And Naomi Osaka also did a step away when she realized that the pressures from the public, the family, the coaches, the team, the Olympic Committee, the country hosting, the pressures, these international pressures, we can only imagine the level of pressures that these young athletes go through. And it is a make or break one-time deal for a lot of them. So the stakes, as they say, could not be higher. So managing their emotions is wildly important. And Miss Biles mentioned a mindfulness, and I would say her transparency, the way she is sharing this with the world. She's not just disappearing. She stands up with her teammates and she gives a press conference in which she is completely centered in herself, brilliantly self-possessed, masked. It just was so beautifully done for the emotions of all of us, because she is kind of an America's sweetheart of a gal. She's clearly so kind, so collegial, so team-oriented, so centered in herself. I remember her doing, it was a year or two ago, where she decided she needed a different kind of an athletic challenge. So she went on this ABC TV show, Dancing with the Stars. I can't remember whether she won or not. But the mental game of putting her mind to a form of athletics that is not her discipline, I think she felt correctly, would broaden her artistry. And I'm quite sure that it did. So for the rest of us, just know that when somebody is talking about mental health, it's like a catch-all basket for everything to do with the mind. And there are some people who have challenges with bipolar. There are some people who have aspects of schizophrenia in their lives or in the lives of family members. This is what used to be talked about in regards to mental health, actual diseases where the biochemical synapses didn't work for one reason or another. But a few years ago, a wonderful speech therapist from a large hospital in Oxford, Oxford University, was on a Churchill grant, and she was reading a lot about emotion, and she found me in New York. And she called me, and I took her to lunch, and we spoke about emotions in regards to the health of her patients in speech therapy. Whether the therapist is dealing with an elder who has had a stroke, or indeed a young person who's had a stroke, or someone with multiple sclerosis, or a young person with stuttering, a speech impediment that is physical with the tongue or the mouth or the throat or whatever, teaching people who have had tracheotomies how to talk with a device in the throat, whatever it might be. Even a speech therapist friend of mine here in the United States, as a sidebar, dealing with COVID patients. The speech therapist has to come in and help with the COVID when people are intubated. So like so many of our fields, it's much more than those of us who aren't in that field would imagine is involved with speech therapy. So going back to my point, the speech therapist said to me, you know, you do a particular thing that is called the step out. Would that be helpful to me in speech therapy? And I went, yes, it would. But the thing is, I have to teach it to you as the practitioner. And then you will be the one, once I get you to a certain place with the Alba emoting emotional effector patterns and stepping out of the Alba emoting emotional effector patterns, then you will be able to decide how to apply it to your field. So in sports medicine, it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing, because this man in this article, this coach, a lot of coaches talk about breathing, but they don't really know about breathing. They know a few things, but they don't really know. I know, and I know how to show you how to do different kinds of breathings that can apply to different kinds of things that you are doing in your life, and what it tells you about your emotions surrounding your life world and your activities, whether it's sports, art, office, golly, whatever our scope of human endeavor is, that have to do with your mental health. We are in post-pandemic. Let me tell you absolutely, unequivocally, that you and I, both, we are in a level of anxiety all the time. And it's because it's in the collective unconscious at this point, because this pandemic is big and it's all around the world. And just when we thought it was over, we're dealing with variants, which happens with viruses. That's just what viruses do, those organisms. So now we're dealing with variants, and all of us are waiting for another shoe to drop in our lives. And it's making us very anxious, and many of us, it's making angry. And so we have people misbehaving on planes, and we have people hitting other people, and people deciding they're activists about this, that, or the other thing, and all they're really trying to do is channel their anger if they only knew it. Now, channeling anger is an excellent thing, but when it's coming out of pandemic fear, please be careful. You know, dear viewer, please be careful with how you are acting from within your emotions. The mental health of you is very, very important, not just to you, but to your family, significant others, friends, colleagues, and indeed the entire world. Because as the old Zen koan goes, if a butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, a hurricane is created in another part of the world. So, your mental health is important. Do what Simone Biles has done when you observe yourself and you observe that you have been making mistakes of any kind in any endeavor of your life, even if it's you're leaving your wallet or you're forgetting, your keys or something like that. It's all the same thing as what happened to Simone Biles, except for with, fewer stakes potentially. But it's the same thing. It's anxiety. We're going in too many directions at once. And so she's calming herself down. She's getting advice. She's being mindful. She will probably is right now going into a sort of a retreat. And then from within the retreat, she'll observe her body, her advisors, her doctors. Everybody will assist her in making a decision as to whether it is good for her to do the individual competition this particular year. She's very young. She could do it next year. Oh, well, the next Olympics anyway. And when we're approaching things this way, what I will leave you with is that it works for everybody's good. When you are approaching things in a way that is beautiful and mindful and loving of yourself and others, that is the way to heal the whole world. And you and I heal the whole world as we are healing and learning how to be kind to ourselves, tender to ourselves, and letting that tenderness go out to other people. So I will leave you with this beautiful view of, because beauty does help us heal. It just does. And remember that even if difficult things are happening in your life, as I think they are in everybody's life in one way or another, please be kind to yourself and kind to the people immediately around you. Please don't fall into traps of misdirecting your anger out to groups of people or institutions. It does not help. Remember that if you are doing good for yourself and for those immediately surrounding you, all things work for good for those who love God. So love yourself and care for yourself and others. Don't forget the others. Blessings. Thank you so much for being with me at Alba Technique for all the feels.